Now, a cautionary tale for every parent. This man was driving drunk. And then the woman you're going to see on the other side of the screen was jaywalking. And a 4-year-old little boy is dead. This little guy. So whose fault was it? Here's the background.
April 10, 2010. The horrific scene of a deadly hit-and-run accident along a dark 4-lane road in Marietta, Georgia. Raquel Nelson had just gotten off the bus with her 3 children. Their apartment complex was just across the street. But the nearest crosswalk was 3/10 of a mile up the road, so the family took a shortcut. They made it safely to the median, but then Nelson's 4-year-old son broke free from her hand. A van rolling towards them never stopped. A.J. Nelson died at the scene. The driver, Jerry Guy, had a history of hit-and-run accidents. That night, he had been drinking. He was on pain meds and is partially blind in one eye. He served 6 months in prison for A.J.'s death and is now a free man. Prosecutors slapped 4 charges on this jaywalking mom, including second-degree vehicular manslaughter. A jury found her guilty.
Why are we following this? She goes back tomorrow for a retrial. Okay, first of all, I see Pete shaking his head. I want to start with you, Pete. You think it's fair?
I mean, I must be missing something. I am sure you included all the context there, Kira, as much as you could. But, I mean, this is horrific. You see, the important thing about this is that Americans can see what it's like for people who probably live in poverty. I'm just guessing. If she took the bus and apparently she was getting groceries, you know, and she's got her 3 kids and she's trying to do everything she can to make ends meet. If she was doing, you know, better, maybe she's driving her own car. Maybe she's not walking across that street. That's what it's like when you're not doing as well in life in terms of income, when you're on the lower end, perhaps, of the socioeconomic scale. And you've got to take public transportation. And you do have to take shortcuts because you're trying to save time. You're trying to take care of your kids, trying to do the right thing, and she is actually being, you know, held responsible for this. It's terrible. It's a terrible look at, I think, economics in America.
Natalie, you're the lawyer.
Right. Well, you have to apply the law regardless of social status. So the fact of whether or not she was, you know, poor or not is not part of the decision making in terms of whether you bring charges or not. The way the statute is read, if you violate a traffic law that inadvertently, unintentionally results in a death, that is second-degree vehicular homicide in Georgia. Now, 99.9% of the time, you have violated a traffic law while driving. You ran a stop sign. You didn't, you know, yield. But the way the statute is, it allows for, if you did not go with a crosswalk, then, and it results in the death, you still can be brought up on those charges, and that's what the prosecutor did in this case.
Okay, so explain the mind of the juror here, because it was a jury that convicted her,
Sure.
okay?
Sure.
So wouldn't you say, my gosh, it was late at night, 3 kids with her groceries, obviously doesn't have a lot of money, getting off the bus, crossing the street. This guy's got a rap sheet. He's drunk. He's on pain meds.
And I think that's one of the issues in this case that maybe has been overlooked to some extent, because the jury in that case, all 6 said they had never taken public transportation. Public transportation in Cobb County is not something that's taken routinely. All 6 of those folks had not ever had this experience that she had. It's not like New York, it's not like Chicago where everybody takes the bus.
It's not always easy.
And right, and you can't necessarily, you know, line up the bus stops with the crosswalks just because an apartment complex has been built. So there is some obligation to use your good judgment as a person who's getting off a bus and where to cross. But that doesn't remove the complexities of, you know, you've got this tragedy, you've got a charge, you know, it's sad.
I have a hard time believing that a jury, though, is sitting back saying the fact that she lost her child isn't punishment enough on some level. I mean, my God.
I'm sure they did think that was, you know, of course, but you can't, you know, disregard the law based just on the sympathy of the fact of what happened.
Can't you, though? This is my question. Doesn't the prosecutor have some kind of discretion? Why
Absolutely.
bring this? Well, then why bring charges up against this
woman? That's the prosecutor's position, and they are elected. They are elected officials.
Can I just point that out? We're living in the South, okay? There's a black-white dynamic here. I mean, there's a whole other discussion that we could have there, and you know that as well as I do.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to continue the discussion on this. Also, here's something else we did. It would have been a 1/6 of a mile trek, okay, to the crosswalk and home. So was this an issue of time, as we've been talking about right here? We sent our producer out to see just how long that walk would have taken if she would have gone to the crosswalk and then back to the apartment. How much time would she have saved? Let's start the clock, and we're going to check back when he reaches the 6/10 of a mile. Let's take a look at the scene first. You're going to see the bus stop is on the left-hand side of your screen behind that tree, okay? You can see the 4-lane road right there with no crosswalk in sight. The apartment complex is directly across the street. The dots actually show the route that they tried to take that night, and sadly, the X marks the spot where 4-year-old A.J. Nelson died. Now, you can see on the other side of the screen, we had our producer walk the route. Not the route where the boy was killed, but the route of if they would have gone to the crosswalk and back to the apartment. How long would that have taken? And could this mom have saved the boy's life if she had gone to the crosswalk? You know, that's what's so hard to figure out.
Right.
Because the guy was drunk, right, guys? So
Yes, right.
he could have sped up, slowed down, whether she walked to the crosswalk or just tried to cross the street to get to the apartment complex. You don't know if that would have saved the kid's life.
And she was doing this with a group of people. She was not the only one that crossed and went to that median. There was a group of people that were with her. And so from a mom's perspective, I can understand a situation where you're with your kids, it's getting dark, you've got a group of people walking with you versus taking off alone to go down 3/10 of a mile and cross the street. They were not the only ones doing this.
Pete, go ahead.
I mean, did your producer have 3 small children with him?
And grocery bags.
Yeah, because that's really key here. I mean, I don't even like to wait in a line, Kira, when I'm with my kids, much less be moving in a dangerous area. I mean, first, the prosecutor never should have brought this case. They have enormous amounts of discretion, but nonetheless, this woman made the best choices she could, most likely with with what she had available to her. And you know, in that case, it's late. She wants to get home, and she's trying to do the right thing. Does anybody actually think that this woman would have put one of her kids at risk? This is a terrible tragedy, and it only makes her life that much worse.
And that's why there's going to be a retrial. I think ultimately that's why the judge, who is a great judge, who's got a wonderful reputation, she saw, you know what, the weight of the evidence here is different.
Now we want you to be the judge and weigh in on this. What would you have done if you were in her shoes and you needed to get those kids home? Would you have jaywalked or walked to the crosswalk? Let us know now on Facebook. All right, so you get off a bus with your kids. The easiest path home is just a straight line, but you'd be jaywalking. So do you cross the street illegally or walk home via the crosswalk? Raquel Nelson decided to jaywalk, and her child was killed by a drunk driver, 4-year-old boy. She now faces a second trial in his death. So we asked you to be the judge. What would you have done in that situation? The viewer verdict is in, and we've got a hung jury. Half of you feel the same way as Paige. She writes, I would have jaywalked, and I'll admit that. I don't think she should be charged for her son's death. Then the other half of you agree with PJ, who writes, sad and unfortunate. This is why we teach children to use the crosswalk. All right, a lot of people just said, drop the charges. But as you pointed out, Esquire, the law is the law.
The law is the law. And the prosecutor, you know, he is elected. This is his job, is to make these hard decisions, make these hard calls. And part of his duty is to apply the law without any regard for the sympathy or the sadness of what happened, the socioeconomic, you know, status of this person. She brought, you know, this child across the crosswalk at night, and it's up to a jury to find out.
Pete, I'm outraged. The fact the guy had a rap sheet for drunk driving. He's on pain meds. He shouldn't have been on the road.
Absolutely, but I disagree. The prosecutor did not have to take this case, and he shouldn't have. End of story. He didn't have to.
Well, he didn't have to. He didn't have to, but that is their job, is to make those decisions.
By the way,
and he should have made a better decision.
All right, we sent our producer, by the way, to walk the 6/10 of that, 6/10 of a mile trek to see how long it would have taken her to go to the crosswalk and then walk home. It would have been an extra 6 minutes and 43 seconds. Could that have saved the little boy's life? You don't know. You're talking about a drunk driver, folks.